Water is a precious resource, and we often take the availability of fresh water for granted. But what if we end up in a world in the future where fresh water becomes scarce due to the impacts of climate change? Well, my guest today is a writer from Finland who has written a novel that describes such a dystopian world. The novel titled Memory of Water by Emmi Itäranta was published in 2014. It was her debut novel, which received widespread acclamation both at home and abroad. It has been translated into more than 20 languages and has also been adapted into a movie. Emmi is a bilingual writer and she writes in Finnish and English. This means when you read her books in English, you are not reading a translated version, you are actually reading words that she has written herself. She has written 3 novels so far and has received many awards, including the Young Aleksis Kivi Prize and the Kalevi Jäntti Literary Prize. Before becoming a full-time writer, she worked as a columnist, theater critic, and press officer. She has studied at the University of Tampere in Finland and the University of Kent in England. It was actually during her studies at the University of Kent when she started writing her first novel. She now lives in Finland after living in the UK for more than a decade. Today, I will talk to Emmi about her life as a writer and how she writes simultaneously in Finnish and English. Emmi, welcome to the program and thanks for joining me.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Yep, great. So, does it still feel like a dream? Like more than 10 years ago, when you started working on your first novel, did you feel like it would have such a great success because it has been translated into more than 20 languages, and you have received a lot of awards for this, and it has also been adapted into a movie? Does it still feel like a dream? I want to know.
Yes, it still feels very unreal in many ways, and especially at the beginning when the book first came out, I had absolutely no expectations for the book whatsoever. When I was writing it, I thought this is probably not even going to get published, and if it ever gets published, nobody's going to read it. So I got to say I went into the whole thing with very low expectations. Of course, when we write, we also dream. Probably every writer dreams of having a great success with their book and movie adaptations and worldwide fame and all those things. But I wanted to be realistic about it, that I didn't expect any of this. And I've got to say, and by the way, I'm not saying I got worldwide fame. I wrote a debut novel that was, for a debut novel, relatively successful, and definitely a lot more than I could have ever expected. But the most rewarding part of this to me as a writer is that still, even now, more than 10 years after it first came out in Finland and then in the UK and US, people are still discovering the book, people are still reading it. So for a book these days to have such a long lifespan is better. You know, that's the biggest dream come true. And that's the thing that I find most rewarding today.
Yep, I understand. So I want to know how you write both in Finnish and English. Like, are you comfortable with the idea that you still write in 2 languages, or does it feel like an extra burden on your brain?
No, it's not a burden, because if it was, I wouldn't be doing it that way. Because I feel that writing, in order to be able to write, I have to be able to enjoy it. I don't want to lose the joy in the writing. So I'm writing in 2 languages because I feel that it brings something into the book, into the text, into the writing itself that wouldn't be there otherwise. I enjoy the interaction between the 2 languages. And I feel that they kind of like work as filters for each other. They filter out a lot of unnecessary things, and the end result is somehow clearer and more to the point because it has gone through the filter of the 2 languages.
Yeah, exactly. And because you are writing in Finnish, and if someone was translating your book into English or some other language for the international audience, then, you know, as I said in the introduction, the readers would have got a translated version of your work. But now, because you are writing simultaneously in Finnish and English, so your readers can actually know and read what you want to say in both languages. They are not actually reading a translated version. And I think it's just wonderful as a writer because you can write in both languages, and your writings are so lyrical and poetic. So I think
thank
it's
you.
I think for the readers, that's actually a great advantage that they can read in both languages, and it comes originally from the writer and just not a translated version. So my question is, are you more comfortable writing in English or Finnish? Which language?
I think for the most part, I feel slightly more comfortable writing in Finnish because it is my first language and I did not grow up in a bilingual family. So in that sense, I'm not bilingual. Finnish is my native tongue and English is still a learned second language. For me. So I think I'll always feel more comfortable writing in Finnish than I do in English. But it's also a different process. I think I've said in an interview before that Finnish is like my own skin. I can never get rid of it, no matter what I do. And English is like a really well-fitting garment. So even if it feels entirely comfortable on me, so that I don't necessarily even notice it, it's still just a garment I put on. I can still get rid of it, whereas my own skin will always be with me because that's my native tongue.
Yeah, exactly. And when you are writing in English, do you personally, because we are writing in both languages, so do you feel like when you write something in Finnish and when you are writing it in English, do you feel like you can transfer the full emotion and completely make the readers understand what you are trying to say in English? Do you feel like you can do it personally?
That's what I aim for. And I think that sometimes I feel that I'm successful at what I'm trying to do, but there are also moments when I feel that I cannot quite convey what I'm trying to say in more than one language. And that actually then shapes the writing, because if I feel that there's something I'm trying to convey and I cannot make it work in both English and Finnish, I might end up just adjusting the whole thing, changing the sentence, changing how I'm saying it. And I may end up with what feels like a compromise. So I might lose the original thing that I was trying to convey, but then I might come up with something else that might occasionally work better, occasionally might not work quite as well. But yeah, there are moments of compromise as well.
Yeah, I understand. Do you think you're born with the gift of writing, or you learned the craft along the way when you started?
I think that everyone learns it. I don't think you are born really with any gifts anyway. You might be born with some qualities that then you can train. You might be born with certain types of talents, but even talent on its own will not make you good at something. To make it sustainable, then you have to practice, you have to learn the craft, whichever craft it is, whether it's writing, whether it's knitting, whether it's fishing, whether it's building houses, whatever it is, you still have to learn it, even if you got an innate talent for it. So no, I don't think I was born I was born with the gift of writing. I think I was born with a lot of imagination and probably a certain love of words and languages. And then I train both of those things and also train myself in the craft of storytelling. And those things combined were what made me a writer.
Yep, I understand. Thanks. So I want to know about your childhood. How was your childhood setting at home? And did you have favorable conditions that you think helped you become a writer today?
Yes, I think so, because my parents were really quite interested in books and reading. I was read fairy tales at home since I was very young and couldn't really read for myself yet. We also always had lots of books at home. My father collected old books. He still has loads of them today. So yeah, my parents always read for me when I was too young to read. They always encouraged my love of storytelling and reading. I learned to read before I went to school. I was 5. and yeah, because I think maybe in some families reading and bookish sort of activities might not be encouraged, but my parents always did encourage that, and I'm very grateful to them for that, because I felt that it gave me a good foundation to become first, more than anything else, a reader. And then eventually I was able to turn that into becoming a writer. I think all writers are readers first, and that's why I think it's so important.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you don't read, how come you are writing? You just
exactly.
have to,
yeah.
That's your foundation. If you read a lot, then you have lots of ideas in your brain, and then you can start writing your own stuff. And I guess I wrote it in the interview that you gave to the Apu magazine in Finland. So your father, he worked at the Finnish broadcasting company Yle. So
Yeah.
so I think because if someone is working as a journalist or in the media, that person, I think, has a habit of reading a lot, because I am a journalist. So I read a lot of his stuff every day. So if I am reading a lot of his stuff, it actually helps me not only with my reading skills, and also give me the imagination and all the required tools that I need to become a writer. And also another thing I would say is that in the Finnish culture, Finnish people actually read a lot. So I read it in a lot of articles, and also in a lot of books, that Finnish people in Finnish culture, the habit of reading is actually respected. So people read a lot, Finns read a lot. And also I remembered the book by almost the national writer of Finland, Aleksis Kivi. So his book, Seitsemän veljestä, the
Seitsemän veljestä, yes, that's right.
Yeah, the seven brothers. You know, when I was in Finland, I went to the library in Kallio in Helsinki. I got the English version of the book, The Seven Brothers, and I started reading, and even the English version, you know, it was so difficult for me because it's so poetic, so lyrical. And I read in a lot of articles that book actually helped the Finns become a nation of readers, because you know, literacy and reading and education is respected and is emphasized in the Finnish culture. So I think that also helped you build a good foundation as a writer.
Yes, absolutely. And interestingly, when I was a child, my father made a TV miniseries about the life of the author, Aleksis Kivi. I remember that from my childhood, how he was doing the background research for the TV series, and he also at the time read a lot of excerpts from his books, both The Seven Brothers and the other one, Nummisuutarit, to me and my brother, who were children at the time. So I think part of my love of reading and literature might also stem from that, seeing him do the background research for these projects when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, exactly. So you describe yourself as an introvert, especially in the Apu magazine interview. So do you think it matches well with your profession as a writer? And have you been an introvert since your childhood?
Absolutely. I remember that even as a child, I lived a lot inside my own head. I mean, I do remember that often I felt like I was just as much entertained by my own imagination, spending time on my own, as I was with spending time with other kids. I mean, I might have occasionally enjoyed more being on my own than with other children. So yes, absolutely. It's something that I don't remember a time when I didn't feel like I was very much an introvert. So I think that has also definitely contributed to me becoming a writer, because writers tend to be people who like spending time observing others, observing the world, and living inside their own imaginations. I'm not saying every writer is an introvert. I think you can be an extrovert and be a really good author as well. I'm not saying that there's any, you know, it doesn't define your quality as a writer, but I do think that often introverts are attracted to writing as a profession because it gives us the chance to be on our own, which is what we enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. And I'm a very extrovert and social person, but then again, at the end of the day, when I go home, I really, really want to be alone, because I want to explore myself. And I think
Yeah.
that's common for all writers. They want to explore their ideas, and they actually want to explore themselves, their imagination. Otherwise, you cannot just be a writer. I mean, I personally feel it that way. I strongly feel about it. So I know how you feel, and it's a common emotion for all writers. So do you think your introversion has affected your social life in Finland, especially?
Yes, it has. Because I'm a bit of a homebody. I don't tend to be the sort of person who gets out there to meet a lot of new people, who likes to go out, who likes to network and socialize. I do enjoy it from time to time, but I do find it on the whole quite difficult. So if it's a choice between, am I going to stay on the sofa at home reading a book tonight, or am I gonna go out and meet people, I will choose the staying on the sofa with a book nearly every time, 9 times out of 10. It doesn't mean I don't like being around people, but I do find that being around people, even if they are people I love and care for, tends to require me to recharge on my own afterwards. So yes, I am not, unfortunately, a very sociable person. And one thing that I have occasionally thought would be useful in the profession of writing, it would be better if I was a great networker. I don't think I am, but it's just something that I've had to accept as part of who I am as a person. And I think now that I'm safely middle-aged, I'm quite comfortable with that. When I was younger, I suffered from it quite a lot. I kept thinking that there was something wrong with me because I wasn't more outgoing. And now I'm just quite happy, to be the homebody that I am.
Yeah, I understand. So I actually want to take this discussion a little bit forward. I have a very good friend in Oulu, and when I was in Finland, she taught me this word, syrjäytyminen, social exclusion. And I talked to her a lot about this, and now I want to talk to you about this. Do you think this social action, this syrjäytyminen, do you think it's like natural to Finnish people, because it's often said that the introverts, they're socially withdrawn, they just don't engage with other people that much, and not only with foreigners also. I think it's also the fact that Finns themselves, they do not engage with other Finns a lot. And I interviewed a Finnish travel blogger, a male Finnish travel blogger, and in his interview he said, I think we Finns should talk to each other actually a bit more because we don't do it that much. So what is your opinion about this syrjäytyminen phenomenon, especially in Finnish culture and also in your life?
Well, I mean, I think syrjäytyminen often refers to also people who, not just social exclusion, but also like slight exclusion from the core of the society, like, not having wealth or not having the resources available to you that the average person would have. So I'm assuming that you mean that as well, that you're also including that meaning here. I do think that we as a society and as a culture, we do tend to be a bit of a society of loners in many ways. And I didn't even realize this to this extent before I spent more than a decade of my life in the UK. Like I said before, I feel that I'm very introverted, but now that I've moved back to Finland, I often find myself talking to strangers in shops. If I go to get a coffee from a coffee shop, I might talk to the person, at the till. I might talk to a neighbor in the hallway of my apartment building. And to me, that's now normal social behavior in the daily life, because in the UK I got used to it. But I realized that when I start this conversation with strangers, they actually find it weird a lot of the time because Finns are not used to it. So I can see that my 14 years in the UK changed me to some extent. I'm no longer quite as introverted as I was before, or maybe I am, but my social behavior is now slightly different. And yeah, I mean, I don't think it would be a bad thing for Finns to engage with each other and everyone else a little bit more, because I think we tend to be a society where social interactions, I don't know how to put this. I feel that a lot of people are worried about other people's judgment. That we are a society where we worry a lot about, if I speak to my neighbor, is she gonna think I'm weird, or is she gonna think I'm crazy, or, you know, there is a lot of fear of being judged, and there's also a lot of shame about things that we don't necessarily know or understand. And I think that culturally, that's something that often stops Finns speaking to foreigners, for instance, because we are worried that we'll be judged. We don't necessarily know whether our, you know, whether the language we are speaking, if it's not Finnish, whether we know it well enough. We might worry about our own understanding. We might be worried about offending the other person without intending to. So we would rather just say nothing. But the thing is that in order to learn all these things that we don't know, we have to take that first step and engage that interaction. If it goes wrong, okay, maybe instead of us feeling really embarrassed, we could say, okay, I made the wrong call here. Next time I'm gonna try to do better. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Finnish culture, I think more than anything else is because we have been culturally and also geographically quite isolated for a long time from the rest of the world. So therefore, there is a lot of worry about, do we know how to interact with other people? And then we choose, out of the worry of or fear of embarrassment or judgment, we choose not to say anything or do anything rather than take the risk.
Yeah, exactly. I understand. So your first book has a dystopian setting where the freshwater resources has become scarce. So Finland, on the other hand, is a country that is more like a utopia, as it ranks highly even on many global indices such as happiness. I was actually checking the latest happiness ranking, and Finland, for the 5th year in a row, today the World Happiness
I saw
Report,
it. Yeah.
Happiness Report has been published, and Finland, for the 5th year in a row, has been ranked the happiest country in the world. So you have the political stability, and in terms of other rankings like education, gender equality. So Finland actually ranks highly on many global indices. So coming from such a country, do you think it's a bit strange that you wrote a dystopian novel, or you like to write this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I guess so. I think that maybe because I come from a country that is in many ways very privileged on a global scale. Maybe that gave me a feeling that I was safe to imagine a dystopia. I tend to think that fiction is a safe space where we can imagine things that we find difficult or scary. So maybe simply because my own life has been a life of relative safety and privilege, I felt safe to imagine a dystopia. Of course, now, 10 years on, we are much closer to that kind of future, unfortunately, globally, than we were at the time. So it's occasionally a little bit disturbing to come across readers who have read the book recently and who tell me, I just read this and I realized it was first published 10 years ago. And I feel that it's a lot more timely now than it was back then. And I think, no, that was really not the future I wanted to predict. but this happens occasionally. Yeah. But yeah, to go back to your question, I think that maybe because I have felt a life of relative privilege and safety, maybe I felt safe to imagine a dystopian future.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? The opposite thing has happened to me after I lived in Finland for 3 years and came back to my home country in Bangladesh. Now I feel like I should write something where everything is in order, like Finland, you know, everything. It
Yeah.
works perfectly. There is no political unrest or problems. And, you know, everyone's right is respected and there is democracy. So, you know, these kind of things. So it has happened. The opposite thing has happened to me. You, a citizen of a country where everything is perfect, like utopia, but you are writing dystopian stuff where nothing is perfect. Everything is a problem. And for me, it's a bit different. So I think we're just walking in the opposite directions in some way. But anyway, my question is, how do you create a dystopian world in your imagination? Like, how do you create the personality of your characters in a dystopian world? What does it take to do so?
So it seems that my imagination tends to be quite dystopian to begin with. I find it a lot easier to come up with dystopian future scenarios than I do with utopian ones, unfortunately. But with Memory of Water, to go back to that, I knew quite early on that it was going to be a dystopian future because I wanted to write about climate change because relatively few novelists were writing about it at the time. Now a lot more are. But at the time, it was actually quite difficult to find novels that dealt with climate change in any shape or form. So I wanted to write about that, and I wanted to center the lack of water, the lack of fresh water. So I knew from that starting point that it was more likely to be a dystopian future than a utopian one. And then, of course, when I realized that I wanted to particularly focus on water as a resource, then from that on, I began to think about, so what if fresh water was a scarce resource? How would that impact the entire society? How would that impact the power structures? How would that impact the ways that people in that society are controlled? And from there on, it was just, of course, there's a dictatorship, of course, there's an authoritarian regime who are controlling the water resources. We have real life examples of things like this where vital resources have been controlled in order to control people. So from there on, it was quite easy to come up with what kind of a society and what sort of a world it will be. And then, of course, my characters had to survive in that world, in that sort of society. So basically, a lot of their actions, a lot of their choices were defined by the need to survive, and the need to survive in particular if fresh water is not accessible or easily accessible for everyone. So those were the, you could say that it was the vital basic needs of human beings in that future, like we cannot live if we don't have water to drink. It was those sort of very essential, necessary things that became the parameters for the story and for the characters.
Yep, I understand. So according to that interview with Apu magazine, after you graduated from the University of Tampere, you could not find a good job in your field, except for short-term contracts and gigs. So you have struggled with employment, as you said in that interview. So can you tell me something about those days? How challenging were those days?
I found it very difficult, especially because for some reason I had grown up under the illusion that if I get a university degree, it won't be difficult for me to then land a job. But the reality turned out to be quite different. So when I did graduate, I spent a lot of time looking for jobs, and most of the time I couldn't even get interviews. So when you do that day to day, week to week, month to month, it can be quite soul crushing. You know, you begin to believe that you are not good for anything because you've done everything you know how to do and everything you can in order to, and you want to work, you want to become, a productive member of the society, to put it bluntly, and you cannot. So, and at the same time, I sort of had this internal struggle going on, because I also knew that I didn't necessarily want a 9-to-5 job at an office. I would have been very happy to get one if someone had given me one, but I also did want to pursue writing as a career, and to sort of make peace with that struggle every day, that the feeling that I should just try to get a conventional job and get the security that will give me, against, but I really want to write and I really want to become a fiction writer. That was, a big battle I had with myself every single day, because it was difficult to justify either. It was difficult to justify writing fiction when I should be looking for a proper job. It was difficult to justify looking for a proper job when really I just wanted to pursue the fiction writing. So it took me several years of this struggle before I actually gave myself the permission to pursue the writing, full time. And I got extremely lucky, because with my first novel, I ended up in a situation where I was able to give up my day job. But until then, it was a struggle of not just making the ends meet, in an everyday life. How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to, put food on the table? But also, how am I going to justify to myself that I would prefer to spend my life just making up stories?
Yeah, I understand. And as you described about your day-to-day struggle and your energy to pursue your dream to become a writer. So my question is, do you think sisu, the Finnish buzzword, everyone knows this word. I mean, the foreigners know the way. You just said that sisu is a word that describes the Finns. So do you think sisu helped you to continue with that struggle and ultimately move forward to pursue your dream?
Probably to some extent, but that said, I don't necessarily think that sisu is, a particularly Finnish quality. I think it's a human quality. Finns just happen to have a word for it.
And the marketed it well. The marketed
marketed it well as well. Yes, exactly. It's been well branded.
Yes.
But but I think that sisu is a human quality, and it exists in every culture, in every country, in every person, everywhere in the world. And I'm sure that there are other languages and other cultures that have come up with a name for that quality. I don't know those words, but I'm sure they do exist.
Okay, and now I want to tell you something that my friend, as I told you about my friend in Oulu, she also taught me this expression in Finnish, leukarintan ja kohti uusia pettumuksia.
Right.
So tell me something about this. Do you think it had a role in your life as you described your struggle to become a writer?
That's a difficult question, because I definitely had times when I thought I was just headed for another disappointment. For instance, when I had finished writing my first manuscript, which was Memory of Water, I started sending it to agents and publishers, and I started collecting rejections. So probably somewhere, somewhere along the line, when I had been doing that for 6 months, I probably had those thoughts of, here I am going towards new disappointments, ready for new disappointments. But then again, I think that's what every beginning writer has to do. We have to brace ourselves, whether we're Finnish or not, we have to brace ourselves for the possibility and actually probability of rejections. I think there are very few writers or very few people who have actually succeeded as writers who have not collected a number of rejections first. It's part of the deal. It's part of the package.
Yes.
It's just like something you have to go through on your way to becoming what you want to be professionally. So yes, I do recognize that, but I think it's also important to sort of I don't want to say get over it, but kind of like accept it as part of what you are trying to do. If you want to succeed as a writer, you are going to encounter rejections, and you got to accept that as part of the package. The disappointments will be part of what you are pursuing.
Yeah,
Even later in the career, just becoming a published writer does not guarantee that you'll never get a rejection again. Of course you can, and most of us will. So
yeah, exactly. Right. So Finns are a nation of coffee drinkers, and I think they actually drink the highest amount of coffee as a nation in the world.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
I was just checking the statistics, and yeah, Finland comes on the top. So why did you choose to write about a tea master in Memory of Water as a Finn? I mean, would it not have been about a coffee master, like how would you say it? That was teemestarin kirja, and it would have been kahvimestarin kirja. I mean, if you wrote about,
yes,
you wrote about it. So why do you think you wrote about a tea master?
There's actually quite a good reason for that, and it's because I knew early on I wanted to write about water and a future world where fresh water is a scarce resource. And before I started writing the book, I was reading about Japanese tea culture. I was very fascinated by it, as you can probably see from the book. And I came across this idea that in Japanese tea culture, the quality of the water used to make the tea was considered so important that sometimes tea masters would walk dozens of miles to a particular spring in the mountains and bring the water from there because they wanted that particular water for their tea, or the tea wouldn't taste right. And when I came across this while reading about Japanese tea culture and its history, it connected with my mind this idea of a future world where fresh water was a scarce resource. And I started thinking, what if instead of tea being an expensive luxury product like it has been in the past, what if fresh water had become the expensive luxury product in the future? And because of the connection between the tea and the quality of the water and the lack of water, those things connected in my mind. So it made more sense to me to write about tea culture in an imaginary future world than coffee culture.
Yeah, I understand. And the main character in your book, The Memory of Water, I think Noria.
Noria.
Yeah,
Yes.
Noria. So do you think she reflects in any way your personality or yourself as a person?
People have asked this before, and I never know what to say, because at the same time it's a definite no, at the same time it's a definite yes. She definitely shares some qualities with me. For instance, we were talking about introversion before. I'm a very introverted person, and Noria is as well. She's someone who lives inside her own mind and her own head and her own emotions a lot, rather than being very outgoing or very social. So that's something we definitely have in common. But I think that's probably, and she feels comfortable expressing herself in writing as well, as becomes obvious from the book when you get towards the end. But I think those are probably the main qualities that we share. She's not meant to be a self-portrait in any way. And I think some of the choices she makes, I don't know if I would make those choices. I don't know if I would feel comfortable making those choices. Also, she has lived in many ways a very protected life, and the book is very much about her disillusionment as she has to grow up and come to terms with how the world works when she is no longer under the protection of her parents. So I don't feel that my life was necessarily that protected as a child, but I do think that we all, or many of us, encounter that as we grow up and come of age, we probably go through some sort of disillusionment about the world. This will also depend on what sort of background we come from, obviously, but for many, growing up is also a time of we begin to realize how the world actually works, as opposed to how we were told as children about how it works.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So yeah, Noria is not a self-portrait, but we do have some things in common.
Yeah, I understand. So before I end this meeting, I want to, because I practice Finnish music, and whenever I talk to Finns, I try to sing a little to them. So I will do it now, and then you will tell me how I sound in Finnish, and especially in singing. Right. So it's a song from Eppu Normally. Do you know the band?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's one of my most favorite songs from that band. So it goes like this. Kun olet poissa ja makaan uksin veren kohina kuunnellen. Sama vanhaa kappaletta sen tempoa muunnellen. Ajatukseni kuin perhoset hullut lampua loistavaa. Kiertelevät, kun yö on tullut, rata itsensä toistavaa. How was that?
That was fantastic. That was really, really good. You have a lovely voice. You pronounce it really well, and you have an absolutely lovely voice.
Thank you.
Do you sing? You know, do you sing like in public, in front of an audience? It's because you should.
Well, I tried to do it in Finland. I had my first karaoke show in Maunula.
All right, yeah. Okay, yeah.
You know what? Nobody came up except two of my colleagues. So.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. You deserve to be heard by a wider audience.
Okay, but I plan to come back to Finland and then sing in public, or do some shows, and then maybe I will just get some feedback from the Finns about my singing.
When you do, let me know, and I'll invite everybody I know. And I hope some of them will come.
Thank you. So thank you, Emmi. It's been great talking to you, and maybe we can talk later again. But now I would like to wrap up this meeting. And thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And thank you again for letting me to interview you, because when I was looking for video interviews of you on YouTube, I couldn't find many. I think I found
there aren't that many.
Yeah, I mean, I think you are interviewed by a Spanish girl in some kind of fairs or something.
Oh yeah, that was a book fair in Mexico a few years ago, before the pandemic. Yeah.
So I just watched that, and maybe one or two more. But I got some of your videos in Finnish, but unfortunately I don't understand Finnish that much to understand what you are saying. So
no, this was really nice, because there aren't that many available in English. Nobody ever asked me to do any video interviews in English. I don't know why. There are quite a few available in Finnish, but for the international audience, it's not that many. So I really appreciate you doing this as well. It was really fun talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. Because I am a Finnophile writer, so one of my missions in life is to tell Finnish stories to the world. Because I have been mesmerized by Finland and the Finnish policies and the Finnish culture, Finnish people and society. So in my imagination, in my mind, I have almost become a Finn. I try to do how the Finns do something.
All right.
So, this is part of my life's mission, to tell Finnish stories, and then that's why I'm emailing and contacting people in Finland, right? Writers, teachers, professors, and other artists to talk to them in video, so that I can just share these stories and this stuff with people outside Finland. Because if I do it in English, it's easier for the international audience to understand, watch the video. Yeah, that's why I'm doing this. But anyway, thanks a lot again. So
thank you. Been a real pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Okay,
Goodbye.
Thank you. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.